If you know me, then you know I tend to stay positive about Star Wars. That goes for the original 6 Star Wars movies, the expanded universe, now deemed Legends, and even the newer Star Wars stories under the Disney ownership of Lucasfilm. Wait, don't run away yet. As I did say, I remain positive about the Disney-owned Star Wars content. I now have a way of explaining it, and I think this will help a lot of Star Wars fans put it all into perspective. Now, there are newer stories that a lot of people like, but there are also stories that split the Star Wars fandom right down the middle. Maybe that statement's a little bit optimistic. But the point is, Star Wars fans like what they like and dislike what they don't. Nothing will change that, not even me, and I wouldn't even try. It's all a matter of taste, and I would never hold it against anyone for their tastes and opinions being contrary to my own. We can debate aspects of Star Wars and talk about our likes and dislikes all day long, but personal attacks are never okay, no matter which side of the argument you're on. But that's the age we live in, where attacks such as this are not meant to cause harm, only a way of conveying passion. See, I'm even positive about the hate. Okay, I'm getting way off topic, and I don't want to talk about the negativity that comes from these type of interactions. It doesn't serve the point I'm going to make about how Disney's Star Wars could be viewed. And I'm really not here to ignite any fires. Star Wars fans are passionate, like I said, and that's truly amazing. I mean, after you watch The Evil Dead 2, then The Army of Darkness, how many fans of the franchise go crazy about how different all 3 films are? Not many, if any at all. But back to Star Wars. I would say most of us got into Star Wars at a young age, and during that time there was a lot of Star Wars content released. Think about it. If you're an OG Star Wars fan, such as myself, you went years without any Star Wars movies and virtually no shows. But in the 1990s, we got to see a resurgence of Star Wars in print form through the expanded universe, and it was a golden age for the older Star Wars fans. Then came the Star Wars prequel trilogy, and with it came a whole host of other expanded universe stories through novels, comics, and even video games. Honestly, how many of you are dying to have Sam Witwer reprise the role of Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games and novels into live action, or a live action portrayal of Revan in the Old Republic? Revan and Darth Nihilus are my dreams to see in live action. Just imagine what they could do with a Sith Lord who can eat a planet. The point is, these expanded universe stories became as much a part of Star Wars lore as the original 6 films, before the Disney buyout and before the expanded universe was rebranded as Legends. Some take the rebranding as a slap in the face to some Star Wars fans, and rightfully so. Expanded universe implies that these stories are just as important as the movies, only expanding on them, where the word Legends means maybe they were real stories and maybe they weren't. For example, the legend of King Arthur. Did he exist in the way we know, or were his tales exaggerated over time? Well, to Star Wars fans, the word legends takes away from the solidarity of the stories and makes them seem to matter less. And I'm one who shares in that sentiment. But with the expanded universe came a lot of stories, and depending on your tastes, some were good and some, well, not so much. In my opinion, the Dark Empire stories were some I didn't care to revisit. I'm looking at you, Luke. 2 U's, evil clone of Luke Skywalker. And I don't want to say that it was a horrible story. Some love it. I'll just say it wasn't to my taste. Now, there is the flip side. While we enjoy the Star Wars expanded universe, George Lucas had another opinion of it. Now, I'm not going to say George Lucas didn't like it. I mean, the guy allowed the stories to be written and published, other than Splinter of the Mind's Eye. That one he commissioned. But I will say that George Lucas has stated that the expanded universe has some great stories, but those weren't his stories to tell. He always held the option to retcon them if need be. Honestly, I can't really think of any that he did that to, other than the changing of the Sith homeworld of Korriban to Moraband in the Clone Wars animated series. But the point is that George Lucas always kept the option open of overwriting Star Wars expanded universe material as he saw fit, or to align more with his own vision of what Star Wars truly was. That doesn't mean it was any less canon. But with the Star Wars Expanded Universe came a whole host of other creators of the Star Wars stories. I know it's a shock. I know these stories were not written by George Lucas. Not really. Pretty much everyone knows this. Authors like Timothy Zahn, James Luceno, Alan Dean Foster, and many more. By the way, two of those authors, Timothy Zahn and James Luceno, have also written Star Wars stories under the Disney ownership. Just a little fun fact. With Timothy Zahn writing the two newer Thrawn trilogies and James Luceno creating such great works as Tarkin and Catalyst. All great novels. If you don't like Disney-era Star Wars, at least give these novels written by two OGs a go. And if you're feeling really spunky, I'd also suggest Claudia Gray, E.K. Johnston, and Christy Golden. All are very talented and worth taking time to read. Anyways, the Expanded Universe, now Legends, was written by many different talented authors, and they really did expand the Star Wars universe beyond the original 6 films, taking the timeline of Star Wars from a tight, roughly 50-year period to expanding stories ranging in thousands of years, adding a rich history to the universe we only previously got a small glimpse of. The Empire didn't always control the galaxy. Boba Fett's fate wasn't ultimately decided by a clumsy Han Solo, and Sith once registered in the thousands. But I think you get the point. Now we're in the Disney era of Star Wars films, series, comics, and games, and some of those stories are almost as good as the original Expanded Universe. Wait, some. Not so much. Where George Lucas always held the rights to create Star Wars movies and series, the newer era is seeing a lot of people writing the live-action and animated Star Wars continuations, or abominations if you prefer, with big names such as J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Robert Rodriguez being some of those writers and directors. But as dismal as you may think it is, let's try to put it into a new perspective. Now, I'm not going to say you should like the newer Star Wars films or series. Instead, I will say to continue feeling the way you do about them, like them or dislike them. It's your choice and your right. Now, as you look at me with disgust over my next statement, let me just add that my position will make sense when I'm finished. There are two main arguments against the Disney era of Star Wars. Not for each individual movie, there are other arguments for that or the trilogy or show, but Star Wars as a whole. The first being that too many cooks are in the kitchen. While George Lucas was the only one to create Star Wars live action stuff, there are a lot of showrunners for the new stuff. In other words, too many visionaries are interpreting Star Wars in their own way. The second is that this Star Wars is not George Lucas's vision, that these stories are not his. Both are true statements from different points of view, but let's go back a second, back to the Expanded Universe. Remember when I talked about George Lucas and the Star Wars Expanded Universe? Well, those weren't his stories either. He admitted that. Then there was the fact that the Expanded Universe was written by many different visionaries. The argument could be made that George Lucas gave them guidelines, and that's true. But now there is a Star Wars story group that does the same things for the writers of the Star Wars films now. Sometimes it may seem like the story group doesn't have as much control as we would like, but here we are. But the fact remains, there were a lot of people writing the Star Wars we loved and disliked back under George Lucas's ownership. He just kept them in print media and video games and away from the live action stuff. But it's when we change our perspective that it starts to make more sense. I'm not saying it's any more or less enjoyable with a different outlook, only that it can be validating our feelings. The way I view things, well, that's a bit tricky, and some of you may agree, while others will spit on my grave one day. Now, this isn't the real point I'm trying to make, but I've stated many times that I go into any new Star Wars project with fresh eyes. The eyes of someone seeing Star Wars for the first time as a young lad. That isn't the entirety of it, though. Although it's a true statement, I learned after watching The Force Awakens that it's different, that there's a 30-year gap in the Skywalker saga. How could this new trilogy be labeled 7, 8, and 9 with that big of a gap? Well, they really shouldn't. Although they do have limited interactions with the original characters, they shouldn't technically be Skywalker Saga episodes. So when I watch them, I drop the episode numbers and just call them The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. This turns these movies into expanded universe stories. So I started doing the same bit with the other Star Wars stories released: The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, Rogue One, Andor, and even the Ahsoka series coming up. I look at them as the expanded universe, all written by different people, all with the writer's own vision of Star Wars. Some are good and some, not so much. It doesn't change my enjoyment or dislike for them, but it gives me a different way of viewing them. Sure, the difference may be that these new expanded universe stories are deemed canon, but then again, my canon still includes Revan, Darth Malak, and Darth Nihilus too. I mean, Anakin Skywalker had an apprentice in Ahsoka Tano that we didn't know about before, so why couldn't Darth Vader have the same in Starkiller? Well, by the way, if they make Starkiller in live action, please don't make him more powerful than Luke Skywalker. For the sake of fun in the game, he would be way too OP in live action. It's just my thought. But the adventures of Rey, Finn, Poe Dameron, and Kylo Ren / Ben Solo should be looked at as expanded universe, no matter what we're told they are. Retitling the movies would not hurt anyone's feelings in the least, and it doesn't seem like weakness to give in to fans. George Lucas would change the movies and their episodic titles throughout his ownership, and most people didn't mind. Okay, some Star Wars fans didn't mind. Come on, man. You changed the way we were told to look at Han Solo by making Greedo shoot first. Well, to me, Han Solo still shot first. And that's one of the beauties of Star Wars. We can view it however we like. We can also dislike what doesn't sit right with us. And again, I'm not talking to you about changing your opinion of newer Star Wars, just that you try a new way of looking at it with hopeful thoughts that you may like what's next to come. Unless you're one of those that sits down with a notebook ready to take notes of what you don't like about the shows or movies. In that case, I don't know what to tell you. Either you feel you have been burnt too many times, you just do not like Disney, or you're just not the life of the party. And I'm sure there's many other reasons, but you obviously love aspects of Star Wars, or you wouldn't give it a second thought, unless you're making money off the negativity, in which case, to each their own. Do you, boo? For me, the vision of George Lucas ended with the Clone Wars animated series, but the franchise continues with more expanded stories, an expanded universe that I enjoyed when others were only writing about it. Now I get to see them in live action or an animated series. But as a side note, George Lucas has been involved in the newer Star Wars a little more lately. He still holds stock in Disney as part of his sale of Lucasfilm, so he is involved, it's just limited. So just look at the Disney era as the continuation of the expanded universe. Love some of it, hate other parts of it, but pick and choose what you want to see. Before I go, please consider hitting the subscribe button and giving the video a big stupid thumbs up. It really does help me and my channel. I've been out of work for the last 5 weeks due to an emergency surgery, and I could use all the help I can get. If you didn't see my short live stream from the hospital bed, I'll link it in the description below. Also, leave a comment of your thoughts. I do try to read them all, and I respond to as many as I can. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. Until the next video, this is Gerald, a Star Wars fanatic, wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Thank you all for watching, and remember, this is the way, and positivity in the Star Wars community should be the only way.